Well, we are discussing citizenship and we have found how expansive is the concept and it expands with a response to changing in social, political, economic situations. And the typical liberal citizenship concept that all people are equal, that they must have the right to vote, they must have the right to free expression, they must have the right to property, etc. Now, this general liberal conception of citizenship, we have seen while discussing this earlier, was first criticized by T.H. Marshall when he gave his own version that excluded marginalized section must be brought into the fold of citizenship. That was sort of a critique of the typical liberal version. So, Marshall we have discussed, so I am not going into it, but I just referred to it that he is one of the earliest to suggest a revision in the concept of citizenship. Now, next to him, I think we should also mention another liberal stalwart criticizing the traditional liberal position, and I mean John Rawls. John Rawls, in fact, is credited with the revitalizing liberalism. Liberalism which was heavily attacked by Marxists and others, that it is an empty concept. It does not mean same thing to everybody, especially in capitalist class-driven societies. And so that is standing criticism Rawls faced, and he created his own theory of justice, and thereby that Rawlcian theory of justice itself was a sort of critique of the traditional liberal concept of citizenship. Rawls argues, I am not going into the details of Rawlsian philosophy, but Rawls argues that citizenship consists in participation, because state was created through a sort of contract among the citizens in order to derive the best advantage of social living to all, and to all not in the sense of traditional liberal political theory of 19th century or early 20th century, but in the sense that two major principles must be reconciled: principles of democracy, liberty, another of equality, and reconciled in order to protect the basic interest of that marginalized, neglected, deprived sections of the society. That is some sort of an inclusive theory of citizenship with justice as the major criterion was the contribution in the form of a critique of liberalism by John Rawls. Secondly, he said that liberal state or liberal politics must give to the citizens the scope for effective criticism of the total social milieu, and he was prepared to accept that even inequality in some cases may be acceptable, provided that inequality will ultimately help that excluded section to be benefited. But he adds a footnote, he says, but that inequality is to be justified, and secondly, no inequality will be accepted by sacrificing liberty. So liberty is the fundamental thing, fundamental principle, non-negotiable and not to be adjusted at all. So citizenship, his main point, basic, which emerges, he doesn't write on citizenship as such, but by implication is this in the revitalized, reinvigorated liberal theory of the state at the end of the 20th century is that it must be a participatory democracy in which citizens are expected to contribute their worth, contribute their best judgment about what constitutes the total welfare of the society. That means it is not a mechanically legal formal definition. It is basically a political definition. And secondly, what is most interesting and important in Rawls' contribution is that the ethical judgment, and that he got from Immanuel Kant, great German philosopher, who argues that every human personality is basically an ethical personality. Because otherwise, if you say equal salary for all, equal facility for all, everything quantitatively equal has no meaning at all. Not only that it is impossible, but even when it is administratively forcefully make it administratively possible, it is not ethically acceptable. So every human being is an ethical personality, and as ethical personality, his rational judgment is to be expected. And therefore, other principles and other arrangements of administration are to serve that ultimate purpose. That is, whenever any dispute arises, whenever anything turmoil arises, anything difficulty arises, he says that we must raise finally, not at the end, at the beginning, but finally we must try to be satisfied that what is called just treatment of citizens must be ethically defensible also, so that we can say it is because of this ethical considerations that we are doing such and such inequality also. For example, giving more to the poor in terms of concessions, in terms of subsidies, when the welfare state gives subsidies, for example. Some democratic state in very recent time has started talking about food subsidy to the poor. That means the same article, poor will get it at a cheaper price. Cheaper means monetarily cheaper, but actually somebody must pay for him. Who will pay? The state. That means other portions of the population who can afford to do that must agree to share it with the neglected, marginalized poor sections of the society, so that the ethical image of liberal democracy is strengthened, and liberal democracy, he concludes, is not dead. So this is one kind of thing, criticism from the liberal camps of the liberal old liberal standpoint. This is so one thing. Now we come to basic fundamental philosophical criticism or philosophical challenges to the concept of liberal citizenship. First is Marxism. Now again, this is not the occasion to go deeper into the particular isms as such. Now what is, so far as citizenship is concerned, how is Marxism related to it? Try to see what is essence of Marxian approach to the state. That is class relations. Marx is of the opinion, after his vast research, that human society in all ages, and he says the human history, as a matter of fact, is the history of class struggles. That means a struggle between haves and the have-nots. And the haves means those who have control and ownership over the means of production and distribution. And the have-nots, those who have no wherewithal to fight with this discrimination. So finally, according to his scheme, he got an answer in class struggle, and class struggle leading finally to revolution by the powerless, by the proletariat, etc., etc. So from this general account of Marxism, what we get so far as citizenship is concerned, first point is that the very concept of a generalized liberal citizenship, this concept is vacuous, this concept is elusive. Marx argues that when society is divided into classes, and when there is class contradiction every time, every moment in respect to everything, then there cannot be any the liberal concept of citizenship. I hope you get the point.
Yes,
No one general comprehensive concept of citizenship. Who is the citizen concerned we are talking to? He belongs to the haves or not to belongs to the have-nots. Now everybody is citizen, but citizen and everybody is equal. Traditional liberal philosophy insists that we are not discriminating anybody, but it is an empty concept. It is elusive concept. Because when, as Anatole France once, he made a very classic statement, yes, everybody is free in a liberal bourgeois democracy. So the poor and the underdogs are free to lie under the bridge, free to remain hungry. State or police will not enforce or make any coercion on the people who go without food. So that is the kind of empty equality, empty freedom. So something like this, Marx's argument is this, that under certain conditions, freedom of the press, independence of the judiciary, and free democratic elections, if these three conditions could be ensured, then in a bourgeois society we can think of some equality, we can think of some effective citizens. Otherwise, it is divided, citizenry is divided. Those who have, they are much more powerful than those who haven't anything except their physical labor, that is proletariat. So this is a standard, very standard but solid Marxian criticism. And therefore their target is that no one standard of citizenship could be there, and therefore one standard of rights we can talk. Marx was very specific. But at the same time, he accepted the concept of civil and political rights of the citizens, so far as a right to freedom of speech. Well, it is bourgeois also champion it. Marx also champions it. There is an agreement on it. Freedom to vote. Freedom, that means freedom to elect certain personalities or certain functionaries which claims to represent the interest of the electors. But now Marx says that nobody can represent the interest of others. So therefore it is useless and meaningless to talk about equality in bourgeois society. Yes, they are equal in the law, but who is going to guarantee that they are effectively equal?
So what is the remedy in this case?
Now, remedy in his formula, class struggle, class consciousness, then revolution, then communism.
That means withering away of state. And
that is the final.
That's the final thing. So
final thing, but everybody now finds and admits almost universally that it is utopian.
Yeah, definitely.
There is absolutely no indication at all of withering away the state. Rather, state is getting more and more powerful as technology is controlled by the state. So ordinary citizens as such. So basic point is the concept of citizen, this very word doesn't mean anything unless and until we give the total social context and the economic system, it makes no sense. That was the standard Marxian criticism. Now I come to a very recent in the sense from 1917 onwards basically, but not that recent in its origin, that is feminism. Because since the days of French Revolution, discussion has started that society is divided not only between haves and have-nots, but society is divided between male and female. And the society, bourgeois society, democratic society, so-called liberal society is basically patriarchal in nature. So this is the standpoint with which they started that group, which is known as generally, the generic term is feminism or feminist, but there are dozens of feminists who do not agree one with another. They differ among themselves. But main focus is this, that these dominations of the male, the domination of the patriarch must be ended because it is unequal. So even so-called liberal democratic society, that society according to the feminists is not a free society. Second argument is this, that liberals use all rhetorics. Everybody is equal, everybody, all are universal suffrage. So all kinds of things they have preached. But the point they say that they have used the rhetoric of private and public interest. So public interest, everybody understands that what touches all. Now what is private interest? The feminists say that the bourgeois ideology, they have equated private, not specifically but by implication, anything private means domestic. And the domestic job, domestic work, domestic responsibility, everything has been given to women. Thereby implying that women must be subordinate. It is the men who will dominate public sphere as members of a political community, as leaders of political party, as members of legislatures making speeches, or different professions, journalism, political leadership, etc., etc. But who are they? They are all basically male. And there is a basic fundamental difference between male perception and female perception of everything, any problem. This is good or this is bad, this is beautiful or this is not beautiful, this is ethical or non-ethical. Any question you raise, there can be a male perception and there can be equally a female perception. So this must be, this difference must be recognized. And if it is so, then they argue we don't accept liberal citizenship. Because they say liberal citizenship quite good, equal, open. Okay, we are not disputing it, but it is all for patriarchal interest. It is the patriarchal interest which has built society in this ideological frame. And therefore, there is a fundamental disagreement which cannot be rectified unless and until it is accepted that women and their perception and their interest, they are unique and must be accepted as such. And therefore, there was a stage in the feminist movement when the earlier generation was satisfied if voting rights is given, because it was not given before, if they are satisfied, if they are allowed reservation of seats in legislature, if they are given some scope to play political roles with the women leaders. In our country, for example, Sarojini Naidu, next generation of feminists, they say we are not meaning that. What we mean is this, that it must be accepted as such that subordination of women to the basic male perception must be removed. For example, they say that liberals want us to believe it is the duty of the women, either in the role of wives or in the role of mother or in the roles of daughter or whatever it is, as if to make a happy family is the total responsibility of the women. Now they say that we don't disagree, but we disagree at the same time. In the sense that yes, it depends to a large extent, but it does not depend to the whole extent to make a family happy. So we have grievances gender-wise, and therefore the rectification must be also gender-wise. So this is one point. Secondly, whenever liberals have talked about equality, equal citizenship, they didn't state it in so many words clearly and openly, but they have got some sort of an idea that when we say citizen, and this word citizen is applied to a woman, then what is her role according to liberal perception? The role is, well, that woman is free, but she is the wife of Mr. such and such, or she is the mother of such and such, as if identification of the female interest accepted, but again through male perception, isn't it? In our country, for example, great novelist Sharashchandra Chatterjee, so popular. Why? Because in his time the movement was not that popular in our developing countries. But Sharashchandra and people like that, many other novelists, short story writers, they have brought very vividly that what is the real pangs of being a woman in a society, which is not only bourgeois, not only liberal, but which is basically divisive, but divisive in a very suave, sugar-coated manner. They say that highest honor goes to women. Women, in our country there is a saying among the religious leaders is that all women like Jagadhatri, goddess. So you make a woman goddess, but in actual arrangement of things, that woman is expected to do all the drudgeries, and you sugarcoat it as you are the goddess. So there is this feminism movement was not in India at that time. I'm just talking about 19th century, early 20th century. But same kind of arguments came in, the basic arguments of the feminists. So far as citizen, now we come to the topic, citizenship, this concept is concerned, they say, well, unless it is defined clearly, which citizen in which context and with what perception and what role to play, then it is not acceptable to us. This liberal concept of citizenship. In the 1990s, Iris Marion Young, she made a film by writing a book, The Politics of Difference. Now, in this book, Young asserted this same argument that unless and until the perception itself is challenged, otherwise this is all tinkering. Otherwise it degenerates into reservations like this. So many seats, so many this. So this is not good. Now in very recent times, since 90s, new concern, mid-80s or 90s, new concerns has come to challenge the liberal concept of citizenship. First one is multiculturalism. And the second one is politics of minority rights. Multiculturalism, because of this context of globalization. People from one culture to another culture immigrate and then they settle and they are bound to mix with the local culture, and therefore the democratic state will be compelled, or it is the duty of the democratic state to resort to multiculturalism in policy making. That no injustice to different cultures so that they can coexist and make the liberal society enriched. So again, all these have got the detailed literature, but I am just referring tangentially to the concept of citizenship, that multicultural concept of citizenship. Kymlicka, 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 now he has a liberal theory of minority rights, meaning thereby all cultural groups are minorities vis-a-vis the majorities. So their rights are to be protected. Bhikhu Parakh has also said that not only this, there is some sort of an inner conflict between multiculturalism itself, that same culture, they attack one another. Salman Rushdie, Taslima Nasreen, they have been attacked by the Muslims themselves. So there is some difficulty within the concept of minority rights.
Is there a relationship between multiculturalism and globalization and minority rights?
No, relationship, they are tagged together, they come one after another in that relation, in a new context. And the new second thing is another Neo Republicanism. We have seen in the other class that civic republicanism was there earlier. Now this is a new kind of republicanism which has come, which has two dimensions. One is radical pluralist, that is the concept of active citizenship. Chantal Mouffe is champion of this. Michael Walzer is champion of this. And another is communitarian view. The McIntyre, Sandel, they said not the individual. Liberals' weakness is this, that they emphasize and focus on the individual. But what is the individual? Every individual is the product of his culture and community. One cannot think of individual personality without reference to the community he or she belongs. So community is to be the focus, and therefore individual all talk of individual rights, individual freedom, individual citizenship, they are bogus unless and until we take note of this communitarianism. And finally, the latest position, that means during the last 30-40 years, a new concept has emerged in what we may call the world citizenship concept. Now there is a basic product of a change in international law. That international law basically means that it is the law among the nations, states. But now, very recently, during the last 20 years or so, international law as an academic discipline, they have accepted the position not states as such, but even we are entitled to take the cases of individuals as subjects of law. This is one advancement. And the second one is that because of globalization, because of interaction, because of interdependence in terms of technology and communication, so world is becoming one unit. And so therefore citizenship not in terms of nation, Indian citizen, Russian citizen, British citizen, not in that time. Can't we talk of global citizenship, global individual, global citizen, or global, even they say global person, this new kind of things. But that is a vision till now, because we cannot obliterate the main necessity of thinking in terms of nation in politics or international relations. So we can conclude in this way that global or world citizenship is a vision. For example, philosophers like Russell or Aurobindo or many other persons, but it is not that empty. In course of time, more and more interdependence will make it compulsory that we must take note of the global background of individual citizenship. Because experts, they move always throughout the world, particularly in IT sector. So they spend the night in Calcutta and they take the breakfast in another country, lunch another country. They are moving all the time, moving because of their expertise, because of their technological power. So maybe in course of time, citizenship notion will again be expanded, just as we noted it is a product of evolution. So basically we can also conclude that it is a very necessary legal, formal aspect of law and constitution, but at the same time it is a product of evolution of the total living context of humanity.